Hey there, Horse Center fans. Matt and I are back with another edition of Horse Center. Matt, it feels like a very strange edition of Horse Center.
Strange is a very good word to use, Brian. The happenings of the last couple of weeks has just been unbelievable, and we have no idea what's ahead.
We're going to talk about the ramifications from everything that's going on with the coronavirus. We're also going to preview a big day at Fairgrounds still on, Louisiana Derby, plus several other big stakes. We also need to talk about some of those big performances from last weekend. Let's watch it all right now here on Horse Center. Welcome to another edition of Horse Center, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. Matt, coronavirus is upon us. How are you today?
I'm here, Brian, but certainly in the world of horse racing, the Kentucky Derby trail is not so straight anymore. It suddenly became a road that I'm not quite sure where it's going.
Yeah, that's for sure, Matt. First off, both Matt and I want to wish everyone out there a safe period through this pandemic that's going through the United States as well as the world. But of course, Matt, we've already heard the news that the Kentucky Derby has been rescheduled for the first Saturday in September. Matt, we're moving the Derby back 4 months. We never thought we'd see such a thing, but Churchill Downs made the decision to move the Derby back 4 months. I guess that's going to be a Labor Day holiday Saturday now. It really throws a monkey wrench. Not saying it wasn't a decision that needed to be made one way or the other, but it really throws a monkey wrench into the entire season of horse racing.
It sure does, Brian. Hey, just think about it. You'll be able to watch the Kentucky Derby from the backyard at Saratoga. How does that sound?
That's interesting. I'll tell you what, though, Matt, I'm not sure I agree with the decision. I'm not a medical expert by any means, but on the other hand, I kind of was in favor of letting the Kentucky Derby go without fans in attendance. I thought that would do the least amount of damage to the racing season. It would also give horse racing a shot to prosper with pretty much every other sport out there canceled, at least for the time being.
Yeah, Brian, I think that's an interesting take on things, and I certainly agree with you. The decision that was made by Churchill Downs to move the race, and of course, I say this, I don't know what the full process is. I don't know who they discussed this decision with. I don't know if they discussed it with NYRA and the Maryland Jockey Club prior to, but certainly moving it means that all roads lead to the Kentucky Derby on September 5th.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Maryland Jockey Club. They've already announced, following Churchill Downs Incorporated announcing the Derby would be moved to September 5. They've already announced that the Preakness would, in fact, be run in September. So we're to assume, no date yet, but we're to assume that it'll be scheduled in a normal sequencing time after the Derby, probably 2 weeks later, probably September 19. Who knows for sure, though, until the official announcement comes in. Maybe even more affected is NYRA, which now has big races like the Travers for late August, the Jockey Club Gold Cup for early October. What do they do with the Belmont Stakes? What do they do with the Travers? So lots of dominoes yet to fall. We're not done probably shutting down tracks or postponing tracks. Matt, you know, me in Kentucky here, I'm kind of heartbroken that there will be no spring meeting at Keeneland. It's all a difficult situation, but of course, health and safety comes first.
Yeah, absolutely, and the ramifications from the Churchill Downs decision, are already affecting the Derby Trail and affecting races already. The top two prospects for the Wood Memorial, which is coming up in a few weeks, have already indicated that there's probably no reason for them to run in the Wood Memorial anymore. So, clearly there's going to be negative effects on a lot of status quo races on the Derby Trail and other divisions also.
Yeah. I have to wonder, and I wrote this earlier this week, I have to wonder if we did have a racing czar or a governing agency overseeing American racing, if the same decision would have been made with the Kentucky Derby. But of course, it's left to the publicly held Churchill Downs Incorporated to do what they want with the Kentucky Derby, given the circumstances. And this is what they have come up with. So I think it's left to the other tracks to scramble to try to best do what they can do now. It'll be interesting to see how the stake schedules of other big players like Naira shakes out. It'll be interesting to see how the Breeders' Cup, set now only 2 months after this year's Kentucky Derby, is affected. One way that I'm a little disappointed, I'm disappointed on several fronts, but one way I'm a little disappointed is the future wager as of now, Matt, is not being refunded. I made some wagers on daily doubles, Oaks Kentucky Derby daily doubles, that I thought was 8 weeks out, and now they're telling me that same bet is they're keeping my money, and that same bet is 6 months out. I certainly bet on races that were happening in 8 weeks. I never would have made the bet 6 months out, so I think that would need to change. We'll see.
Well, I think they'll probably give you several more opportunities during the summer to make different bets in future wagers.
So keep my money, but several more opportunities for them to make more. I see what you're saying. Interesting. All right, Matt, let's jump off of that train of thought here, because we want to talk horses. That's what we generally do on HorseCenter. And we want to talk about the Louisiana Derby, Matt. And there's 14 horses. There's also a couple also eligibles. There's 14 horses that are going to line up from mile and 3/16 this year at Louisiana Derby. First off, do you like the distance change that Fairgrounds has done?
Well, I think more than whether I like it or not, I think it's going to be a big factor in the race and the kind of horses that are in there. Hey, most of these horses have never run a mile and an eighth, let alone a mile and 3/16. So I think the distance is going to be a factor.
Well, several of them have run a mile and an eighth simply because the Fairgrounds has kind of amped up their distances all spring. So a lot of them coming out of the Risen Star, for instance, did run that 9 furlongs, including the favorite, Matt, 7-2 on the morning line. Enforceable, I'll tell you what, he should be the favorite given his past performances, his consistent rallies. He's the Lecomte winner. He ran a good race, a good enough race when second in the Risen Star. But I tell you what, if ever there was a vulnerable favorite in a big race, it looks like Enforceable, not taking anything away from him. But this is just about as wide open as you get.
Well, just because he's vulnerable, just because it's a big field, et cetera. But I think he is one of the horses in the race that will definitely benefit from the extra distance in there. I was on Enforceable heading into the Lecomte. I was not as much on him in the Risen Star, but I'll be honest with you, Brian, after handicapping the field, I think I like him again in here just because I know he's going to be running like he has in both of those other races, and the extra distance is probably the biggest plus for him in the field.
Yeah, and what I meant too a little bit by the vulnerable favorite, Matt, is he does look good on paper, but on the other hand, he's only winning one of those recent stakes races. That was the Lecomte, and there's just so many good options in here. The problem is narrowing down the options. Enforceable, like I said, he deserves to be the favorite, but as a horse player and looking at the odds, if it's anything like this morning line, I have to look elsewhere because I'm not excited about him at 7-2. Having said that, I agree with you. He is one of the horses to beat. There's a couple horses co-second choice on the morning line, Matt. They're both also coming out of the Risen Star. One of them is the winner of I guess it was the second division of the Risen Star, the son of Uncle Mo. That's Modernist for trainer Bill Mott. Broke from the rail in the Risen Star. Now he's in a 14 hole.
Yeah, complete flip flop around in this race, and of course, if you remember that race, and I think we'll have the replay up for the folks to watch. He got out. He got out on a lead, and it wasn't a fast pace, and was able to take that most of the way around. But this is against a couple of the same horses that were in that field in Major Fed and New York Traffic. But that's a whole different ball game, breaking from the 14 hole and going the extra distance in this race. So I don't like him very much in this spot.
Yeah, he has run a couple of 9 furlong races, like a few of these horses have. But yeah, I think it's a tough spot too. 14 hole, I think he was benefited by the pace, as you say, and I think probably benefited by being on the rail there. I don't expect him to be on the lead or even super close to the lead here, especially from that post position. So I think it's a new ball game for Modernist, and tough to get excited. Having said that, he is a progressive horse moving forward, so another one with a shot. Silver State, I was a little surprised, is the other 6-1 second choice, one of 2 from the Steve Asmussen barn, working really well, knocking on the door, but he hasn't been able to get it really done yet, Matt.
Yeah, and I think probably the 6-1 is up there because, hey, look back at his past performances. He's burned a lot of money in those close finishes, Brian, that you mentioned. He was been a short price in every one of his starts. So, I guess it's probably fair to think that he's going to get action again. Second in Lecomte, third in his division of the Risen Star. But again, Brian, he's all the way out there in the 13 hole, and that's just really tough.
Yeah, they will have a good run at a mile 3/16 in the first turn. But yeah, Matt and I are not loving these outside posts for some of the top contenders. 13 hole, again, I think is tough. I think he might very well be a horse getting better, and he's certainly a dangerous horse. I do actually prefer him slightly to Modernist, the other 6-1 shot, but that's one of the favorites. I still feel pretty good about looking elsewhere, getting some bigger odds in this tough field. Matt, there's 3 horses next on the morning line at 8-1, and there's some interesting horses here at 8-1. Let's start with Wells Bayou, who will be coming for trainer Brad Cox, who generally has most of his horses at fairgrounds. He'll be coming from 2 strong performances at Oaklawn Park.
Yeah, and Cox opted out of the Rebel. Heading into the Rebel, there was a chance he was going to run there. After you mentioned, Brian, some really nice performances there, and chose to go to the Louisiana Derby instead. Got quite a much bigger field in this case, and I really liked his performance in the Southwest. He set the pace. It was a much brisker pace than, for instance, the pace that Modernist set when he won his division of the Risen Star. Wells Bayou, I guess, breaking from the third post, is likely to go to the lead, and we'll see whether how much pressure he gets from there. Son of Looking at Lucky should be able to handle the increased distance, but he did get caught at the end of the Southwest. So I'm a fan of that performance of Wells Bayou. I like the 8-1. I don't know if we'll get it, but I'm a little bit concerned about the distance.
Yeah, 8-1. With all these horses to bet, I think he should be around 8-1, and I really do like the performance too. I like the performance before that, where he really took it to an allowance field at Oaklawn Park to start the year. So Wells Bayou has a lot to like. Breaking from the 3-hole, Matt, I haven't projected number 2 early on my pace projection. I think there will be one horse ahead of him, but I think he sits a good stalking trip. And I think there is the advantage here, even though it's a mile 3/16. I think there is an advantage here to having some early pace, because there's so many horses in here who really like to rally. So Wells Bayou, 8-1 on the morning line, breaking from the 3, coming from Oaklawn Park for Brad Cox. I like him as much as anyone, and I'd be disappointed if he's too much lower than 8-1, but I think he's got a real shot in here to stick around. Another 8-1 shot I like is Major Fed, improving son of Go Zapper. Second last time to Modernist, but he was rallying into that slow pace. Thought he ran a good race, and he's lightly raced. I think he's getting better. I think the distance also should help him.
Yeah, he was rallying. I mean, if I'm the chart maker, I say that was a mild rally, but he gets a nice jockey switch to Joel Rosario.
All right. The other 8-1 shot, Matt, is a bit of a plotter. Speaking about late runners, Porthos really hasn't shown much speed for trainer Todd Pletcher, but the Son of Tapit's coming off a rallying third in the Withers, and before that he won a maiden race by a lot of lengths. It looks like the distance should be a good thing for Porthos.
I agree on the distance, but I think this is a big step up in quality of field compared to the Withers, so he's going to have to make a big improvement in my eyes.
Yeah, he seems like a horse more apt to fill out a minor award to me as well. But if he can keep improving, another one to consider at least. And another one to consider is 10-1 on the morning line, Royal Act. Good effort in the Lewis for trainer Pete Urton. That was his first race on dirt, finishing that race very well. It comes from California. He's never raced away from California. 10-1 on the morning line on Royal Act. I could understand people liking him as well.
Yeah, could possibly be more than 10-1 in this particular field coming from California. In that Robert B. Lewis, he was second to 1,000 Words. 1,000 Words didn't come back that well in his next start, for whatever that's worth.
That's true. Still a horse that certainly could pop up in here, although generally California to Louisiana, I'm not sure I like that move as much. It seems like this would be a harder track to take to for Southern California horse than, say, an Oaklawn Park type of track. All right, Matt, we got a bunch of 15-1 shots, and I can't throw any of them out either. We'll start with the New York Breds in Chestertown and NY Traffic. Different kinds of horses. Chestertown for trainer Steve Asmussen's a horse who keeps getting bet, but he looks like he's getting a little bit better every start. Very expensive horse purchase price, and he's working well, Matt. I just have a feeling Chestertown, mile 316, should be right up his alley. I have a feeling Chestertown's getting good at the right time, at least for the Louisiana Derby. I guess I can't say that for the Kentucky Derby anymore.
Well, he's certainly going to have to be getting better. As you mentioned, he had a fast workout when he was, I think, in that case, working in company with Silver State. But I'll tell you what, Brian, he's really going to need to step forward, because from the races that I've seen nothing but a slow horse.
Okay, I like him better than you do. What about the other one, NY Traffic, Matt? He gets blinkers on after breaking from the 11 hole in the Risen Star and going right to the lead. Ran a good race, just missed second. Now he's 15-1 in here, and he's breaking from the 11 hole again. Blinkers on. I got to think they're going to send him.
You got to think, right, Brian? From the barn of Saffie Joseph, his horses, often can be pretty speedy, and putting blinkers on, it sure seems to signal, along with that post position draw, that he's going to have to go early.
Yeah, and I've already, in fact, both of us have already said we like Wells Bayou, so I'm sticking with the idea that Wells Bayou can beat NY Traffic, but I expect them to be 1-2 probably early in the race. Another 15-1 shot, Matt. I feel like you're not going to like so much, but I could see something there, is Shake Some Action, because I think I like that allowance race better than you do, where he held off. Chestertown had a little trouble in the race, but Shake Some Action held him off. It was a nice win. 2 straight 9 furlong races for trainer Brad Cox. I wouldn't throw this one out either.
Yeah, I mean, with Brad Cox's trainer, and with a pattern that Brad Cox likes to use, breaking their maiden on the turf, coming back then on the dirt, and certainly made an improvement going turf to dirt at a big price. He could certainly pop a good one.
Yeah. So, as I said, I think I like that allowance race where Shake Some Action beat Chestertown. And Sharecropper, who's 20-1, he had some trouble in that race as well. Another horse who could pop up here a little bit. Last horse I really do want to mention is Mailman Money. I think the Son of Golden Sense has some talent for trainer Brett Calhoun. He ran kind of an indifferent race in the Risen Star, but it wasn't bad. He had a little bit of trouble. He made a middle move. I'm worried about a mile 3/16 for him, but on the other hand, he looks like a horse who could really step up off that Risen Star experience.
So what are you telling me, Brian? How many horses have we tossed from this field of 14?
Matt, I think it is one of the most wide open Derby preps I've ever seen.
Yeah, we have not tossed many in this race. So, folks, you're getting you're getting a roundabout message from Brian and I, or maybe not. Maybe it's pretty clear that we've got some favorites in here that have good credentials, but a whole bunch of other horses that who knows what's going to happen with the big field, getting a trip, the extra distance. Could be bombs away, maybe not on top, but certainly in the try.
There you go. And reiterating what I was starting to say, Mailman Mounty, he just has a progression where I think he's going to improve this time. Mile 3/16 might not ultimately be his game, but who knows? If he runs a big race and nobody can run him down, maybe Mailman Money is a horse to watch out for. Having said all that, Matt, I'm leaning towards Wells Bayou, Chestertown, and Major Fed. I think if I can get the exacta out of those out of those three horses, I think it's going to be a really nice exacta. Chestertown, I think, is going to keep getting better, but I think if I had to pick one horse as the horse to beat, it would be Wells Bayou.
Yeah, I'm certainly going with, as I said, maybe leaning a little bit towards Enforceable with his experience and the extra distance. But I also like Wells Bayou, and my third horse in here is probably Silver State, being as competitive as he has been, to get a piece again.
All right, I am off the chalk in a race this wide open, but yeah, certainly Enforceable and even Silver State are horses to watch out for. The Fairground Oaks, we can't say the same thing about, Matt, as far as wide open. This looks like finite. Can anyone step up and give the Daughter of Munnings a real race? I mean, Steve Asmussen trained filly has won 4 straight stakes, and she's really looked good. 2 races this year, both at the Fairgrounds.
Yeah, every race seemingly getting better and better and better. And we've seen Asmussen do this with fillies on several occasions before. It's a field of 6. The rest of the field, their speed figures, Brian, they don't even measure up to Finite's low speed figures. And in the books of basic handicapping, that makes a horse awfully hard to beat. I'm going to watch this one, Brian, and see just how good Finite might be.
Yeah, it sure looks like she's primed for her 6th straight win, her 3rd stakes win at Fairgrounds this year without a loss. I will say that her last race, the Rachel Alexandra, where she beat British Idiom by more than 4 lengths, was her best race of her life. If she can run back near that race, she's not going to get beaten here. Antoinette has won 2 in a row for trainer Bill Mott. Temper's Rising has run some good races, rallying for trainer Dallas Stewart. But the most interesting filly below the obvious heavy choice Finite is Bonnie South to me, in that she beat She Dares the Devil last time. She Dares the Devil came back and won the Honeybee, a very nice performance after that. So also a Daughter of Munnings, also trained by Brad Cox. I think Bonnie South would be the one likely to give Finite the toughest test. Matt, we also have some good older males on the menu at Fairgrounds on Saturday. Let's start with the New Orleans Classic. Looks like it's probably Silver Dust's race to win. He's been getting it done at Fairgrounds this year.
Has been getting it done, right? Has 2 wins at Fairgrounds. He won the Louisiana Handicap, a grade 3. He won the Mine Shaft, a grade 3 for Brett Calhoun. Of course, we do need to mention that he was disqualified from the purse money in that Louisiana Handicap for a drug positive. It was the same kind of drug positive that has been happening to Joe Sharp. Apparently, both of them use the same deworming drug that, when it metabolized in the blood systems of the horses, it turned into a compound that was similar to a compound that is illegal. And as happened with Joe Sharp, Brett Calhoun had some disqualifications due to that, and Silver Dust was one of them. So what to do with that, I don't know. Came back and won the mine shaft after that and was clean, so maybe we can let it go.
Yeah, it seems like a mistake more than anything malicious there. And that's just my opinion. I could be wrong on that, but that was 2 starts back. Silver Dust has turned into a very consistent older runner who wins a lot of races. And if he's not winning, he's right there. So it's clearly the horse to beat. But 2 very interesting horses in this race below him, Matt. One, of course, is By My Standards, who won the Louisiana Derby just a few starts back, because he ran in the Kentucky Derby and then was gone for the rest of the year. He came back for trainer Brett Calhoun with a 6th length return win. So By My Standards could be a very interesting handicap horse this year.
Yeah, and that's going to be my pick in this race, Brian. Of course, Silver Dust is the horse to beat, but I'm going to say I'm looking for By My Standards, as you mentioned, that flashed all that talent last year, to step up and improve, as he well should, off of that allowance win, off of that long layoff, and beat his stablemate. I don't know, because how often does a handicap horse these days string together 3 first-place finishes?
By My Standards is an interesting horse map, but so is Fearless. Fearless, 4-year-old gelding, trained by Todd Pletcher. He didn't run until December of his 3-year-old season, just this past December. He won a sprint down at Gulfstream Park, but then he came back around 2 turns at Gulfstream Park in his 2nd career race and really looked impressive. We've seen this before with Pletcher, having horses who barely raced early in their career, and they just show all that talent finally ready to bust out. And Fearless may be another one.
Yeah, it's the more patient Todd Pletcher in the last few years than we may have seen earlier on. Fearless, that was a speedy, got a big speed figure in there, and he was well liked when he was purchased for $725,000. So that horse was a good looker, but it took a while to get to the track, and I agree. He could easily make another step forward in this race.
Yeah, tough spot for your 3rd career race, but Fearless, like other Pletchers of recent years, I'm thinking maybe Liam's Map and Cross Traffic, who just suddenly appeared as older horses and became really, really good horses for trainer Todd Pletcher. All right, Matt, the other strong race on the card is the turf race, the Muniz Memorial. Matt, I'll remind you that the winner of this race last year went on to be the horse of the year.
Wow. Thank you for reminding me of that, Brian. I had forgotten that. But yeah, race 10 on the card, 13 horses. Some of those familiar names going on the turf. It's 1 1/8 miles from the turf. There looks like there's a little speed in the race with a couple of horses from the Brad Cox barn. You got Chad Brown, maybe with the favorite, with Instilled Regard, who's making his first start back after finishing 3rd in the Pegasus World Cup. Before that, he had a win on the turf at Gulfstream Park.
Yeah, Chad Brown, of course, trained bricks and mortar to a hard-fought victory over a long shot in this race last year. And I think both of Chad Brown's horses in here, Matt was talking about Instilled Regard, who's made a very nice transition to the turf, although he's only won 1 of those 5 turf tries. But he's run very good races, including that 3rd last time in the Pegasus World Cup turf. But the other one, Rock Emperor, Matt, he was an import for Chad Brown last summer, and he ran 2 pretty sneaky good races, especially the Belmont Derby last year. He's been away for a while, but this, it's a broken record saying Chad Brown might have another big turf horse, but Rock Emperor could be another big turf horse for Chad Brown, working off that, improving off that talent he flashed last year when he first came over. So Chad Brown certainly could win this race again. We got to talk about Synchrony, who's been a nice turf horse for years and really seems to like the Fairgrounds turf course. You mentioned Brad Cox. Factor this coming off a nice win. Henley's Joy has done things that would suggest he could win here before. Channel Maker cutting back in distance. Dot Matrix is a horse that we probably shouldn't throw out. And Norm Cassie had a nice win with Don't Blame Rocket a couple starts ago. So it's a really nice field, Matt. I'm kind of thinking that the old man, the old reliable Synchrony could do it, but he might be up there with the Chad Brown horses as one of the favorites. Don't throw out factor this from doing it again for trainer Brad Cox.
Yeah, and I just want to mention about Henley's Joy. Henley's Joy is going to be making his first start for Steve Asmussen. Jeff Bloom, of course, the owner of Midnight Pursuit, who stars for Steve Asmussen, has moved all of his horses from other trainers to Asmussen. So this is a first start on the trainer switch. Channel Maker had some traffic problems last time in the Mac Diarmida off a layoff. It's always dangerous, but I'm going to go with it. Brian, it's me saying this. I'm not going with Chad Brown. I'm going to go with Synchrony in here. I like the switch from the last race. He had an inside post position, and now he's all the way on the outside. I think that's going to allow him to get a nice, clean trip this time.
Yeah, Matt and I are pretty predictable in liking Synchrony here in the Muniz. All right, Matt, let's talk a little bit about what happened last week. I want to start at Oaklawn Park with a couple races that were run on sloppy tracks, but I still think these performances, both were front-running performances, but both were very different. Let's start with Nadal, a horse I really like, Son of Blame, a Breeders' Cup Classic winner. And Nadal had done nothing but sprint in 2 starts. He came to the Rebel, Matt, and you just don't see horses on a contested lead and contested by multiple horses and contested through fast fractions, able to really run as well down the stretch as he did in the Rebel. You know, it might not on paper look like a sparkling performance, given that he beat a big long shot by not a big margin, but I thought it was a really good race run by Nadal.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing you can criticize about that performance. As you said, a contested pace, and you and I have talked about that on so many shows. It doesn't necessarily have to be the speed. It's the fact that it was contested. But in this case, it was also fast. So it was a fast and contested pace, and still had the courage, had the guts, had the endurance, I guess, to take the race and get the victory in there. Who knows what happens now? Does he go on the shelf? Sorry, Brian. Sorry, I'm bringing it up again. Does he go on the shelf now for a while? Does he take another start? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but a very good performance.
Well, you said it about the Wood Memorial, Matt. If I have a very good horse who is going good now and there are big races, why not run them? Why not run them in the Wood Memorial? I know there's no Kentucky Derby as was supposed to be a month after, but you know, you win the Wood Memorial, that's a big thing, and I'd hate to see horses just doing really well now, and maybe they'll never be doing better. Who knows? You know, knock on wood, I hope they all are doing great comes August and September, but you just don't know. And if you own these horses, let them run in these big races without the Derby a month later anyway. That's my thought. Anyway, I liked what Nadal did. And then, of course, on the same card earlier on the card on that sloppy track, there was another speedy performance, Matt. And I'll tell you what, Serengeti Empress won her first race since the Kentucky Oaks, but I don't think it's going to be the last.
It'll be interesting to see, Brian, and when Serengeti Empress gets loose on the lead, we know how dangerous she is, because, you know, she's just not a speedball, Brian. She's got quality to her also from the training from Tom Amos. She got out there, she got loose. The only pressure that she got was from a loose horse that was ended up on the outside of her for a little bit, but she was tough. She's fresh and on the lead. Congratulations to Tom Amoss.
Yeah, Serengeti Empress, Matt, I think is on the verge of a huge year. Midnight Pursuit is the clear leader of this division, even though she hasn't raced in America this year after everything she did last year and what she did over in Saudi Arabia. You know, I'm not going to say one thing to knock Midnight Pursuit in the very least, and I really never have in her career. But Serengeti Empress is a real challenge to Midnight Pursuit. Here's one of the things I'm thinking with Serengeti Empress, Matt. You get a top speed horse at the top of their game. More often than not in these distance races, they're going to be able to control the race. And I think there were circumstances last year where she ran into too much speed for whatever reason. There was just a lot of speed in some of those races she ran. I think she ran huge in the test. I think she ran huge in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. This year, I think she's going to find more races similar to the Azeri, maybe not a sloppy track, but similar where she can just control the race early. And then good luck to anybody trying to catch this one. I think Serengeti Empress is a real challenger to Midnight Pursuit, and I think both of them are primed for huge years in the filly and mare division. Speaking of prime for huge years, how about Charlatan, Matt? The son of Spacetown. We talked a little bit about him on the Kentucky Derby top 10 off only a sprint race. You had him in your top 10. I said, I can't do it after only 6 furlongs. He looked better at a mile than he did at 6 furlongs in race number 2.
Yeah, Brian, I had a feeling that was going to happen. Handled the 2 turns, drew off impressively, got a really good speed figure. He'll move up in my top 10. He won't move up above everybody until he wins a stakes race, but I don't know, Brian. The sky's the limit in here, and I'm just going to editorialize once again. What happens now? Does Baffert put him on the shelf for a while again, or does he race him?
Well, he's to date won a maiden race and allowance race, but the maiden race was very impressive. The allowance race was super impressive. I'm not sure exactly what he beat in there, and I think he had the race set up pretty well to himself at Santa Anita. And the first quarter mile, I looked at him and I thought, boy, there might be some sprintiness to him. But then I watched the rest of the race and the way he was coming down the lane and the acceleration he had while not being asked in that mile race. And I said, well, he might just be really fast that can go as long as you need him to go. He might be that good. Certainly he's up there with the most exciting 3-year-olds, if not the most exciting 3-year-old in the country right now. He's yet to run a stakes race. Who knows what's going to happen from here with everything that's happening with the Triple Crown. But obviously Charlatan is a horse of immense talent.
Yeah, can't disagree with any of that.
All right, folks, that's our show. Again, Matt and I want to remind you to stay safe, make smart decisions now, and everybody be well during what's going on, both here in the United States and throughout the world. Matt, let me get a parting shot from you before we close out today's show.
Oh, Brian, I think I've shot off a lot of shots today, but I certainly want to agree with what you said. Make good decisions. I can only hope that this is going to be over sooner than later, Brian. And of course, I want to thank our producer, Brett Workman, for putting together the show.
Thanks to Brett. And thanks to all you watching every week. Matt and I sure do appreciate it. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation, you could do that now for us. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. Folks, Matt and I will be back with another edition of HorseCenter next week. We hope you tune in then. Thanks for watching today.